I am going to do something that I every once in a while do, which is completely deviate from what I prepared. And I'm going to do that because much of what I prepared has already been said. And what I'm about to say doesn't mean that what I had prepared to say was so important. By complimenting the speakers that I've been hearing today, this has been profound for me. I wanted to thank also Lindley and Dave for at least 5 or 6 phone calls on a Sunday or a Saturday afternoon or something, for inviting me into this. As I'm an academic, I work at a university, and it's easy to get lost in the hubbub of just being on a campus, just all the hubbub stuff. And so I sometimes, I'm actually, to be quite frank, feeling quite guilty sitting here, not having gotten more involved than I have to date in this activity, Real Organic. I joined the National Organic Standards Board, so here I go, I'm off script now. I joined the National Organic Standards Board a couple of years ago, and I can tell you one thing, I did not know what I was getting myself into. And I was so thankful for Francis and Emily and Harriet welcoming Steve Ayler, welcoming me in to the fold so I could kind of understand where I might fit into this. Some people have called me a numbers guy, which is funny because I'm not a particularly strong mathematician. But I remember, and not to get too personal here, but a close friend of mine was diagnosed with cancer. And the surgeon said, we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And that's my wife. And so I said, could we see the data? Could we see the pictures so that we can make an informed decision? And it's kind of the way my mind works. Whether it's genetically modified crops, where I spent 10 years, really about 10 years, on a somewhat failed effort to prevent herbicide-resistant crops, and then this so-called new generation of 2,4-D and dicamba crops from being deregulated. All the while that I was working on that, it was the farmers that were supporting the effort that I and folks in my shop, I have a lab where young people work with me to collect the data. And I was always struck by how quick we were to go to make a decision with so little insight. I went to the Moses conference last year, and it broke my heart, I'll tell you, to hear 2 sessions that weren't even in the program on dicamba drift problems on their crops. This is a herbicide that we deregulated corn and soybeans so that they were genetically modified to apply that herbicide on them. That was my 10-year project that I didn't do so well convincing EPA and USDA not to do that. So I honestly was naive when I went off on this hydroponics vote or the year leading up to it, thinking, well, gosh, this is the organic community, and they're going to look out for one another. And it's not like in the GMO thing, I felt like I was fighting against Monsanto and Dow AgroSciences. And they were trying to convince USDA and EPA, please make the right decision. We should not do this. And then they would say, well, you got to think about the stakeholders, Dave. That's where you're missing the boat. We read your stuff, Dave. But you don't understand that we need to hear from the stakeholders, and we're hearing from them. So Lindley and Dave Chapman gave me 4 questions. One of the questions is why do we make decisions that don't seem to make sense to us? Lindley talked me through these questions, which was very helpful. And I would say that one of the reasons why we make bad decisions, NOSB, EPA, USDA, APHIS, Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, is this stakeholder thing is nonsense. That's why. That's one of the reasons why. Because we can just handpick our stakeholder group, like a group of farmers that will come in to a presentation at EPA where the farm on the bottom right-hand corner of every one of their slides is the Monsanto logo as they step through their no-till farming practice right next to Francis's place on how badly we need to have this legislation go through. The numbers guy would ask, where's the data? Let's look at the data we have, for goodness sakes. You increase the area treated and the amount of stuff that we put on the land and the probability of seeing it in our water, groundwater, surface water, our neighbors' fields increases by a predictable function. We know that. We have that data, and yet we deregulate and make bad decisions. Why? Because we're talking to the wrong stakeholder group. This is a powerful stakeholder group here. I am deeply moved by what you presented, and Francis, and I'm very bad with names, Cameron's pictures of those aerial images, my goodness. The data are there. I had prepared most of this was about climate change and diversity. We heard it all. How are we going to sequester carbon or mitigate the albedo effects of plastic reflecting and trapping heat in the air? We're not saving carbon. And my goodness, these hydroponic things, I spent so much time with the students. We looked. What did we see? Lighting, the cost of lighting, compressors, synthetic lubricants, polystyrene, polyvinyl chloride, Lexan, Tygon tubing, duct tape. That's what I see in the pictures you showing. Chlorinated hydrocarbons. This is the same as 2,4-D and dicamba. This is unacceptable. And my goodness, to call it organic. It looked like a paved over roadway through the plastic there. Okay, so we have a problem with stakeholders. And here's another problem that we have, and pardon, I think my NOSB colleagues agree, though I should not assume that or presume that. To get really specific, the subcommittees on the NOSB work on things, and it seems to me, certainly it was the case with hydroponics, that the subcommittee was pretty much on the same page. But the subcommittee is only a fraction of the NOSB. The whole group, 15. The subcommittee, I don't remember the number, 5 or 6 of us. I will tell you, I was surprised by several people's votes there that were not from the subcommittee on how they voted. And all of the team that's here from the NOSB knows, and I think they all agree, I believe we need way more time in conversation and debate as a National Organic Standards Board. We came to that meeting debating amongst ourselves, but to sit there in that room for 3 days and then come to the end for a vote where you have a 3-minute time period to say what you think, it's an insult to me and to all the rest of the board members. That is not good pedagogy. That does not lead to good decision making. We need to create space for conversation. In my view, that approach needs to change. How is academia doing supporting the real organic movement? Was this third question. And I'll tell you, and I have strong feelings about this, and we could argue about it, or some of my university friends would argue with me about it. University folks are really uncomfortable advocating for anything. I am serious about that. We write papers about advocacy and neutral arbiters. And most of my colleagues are very comfortable being a neutral arbiter. You? Let me look at those plastics and look at the light transmission quality. And let me look over here. Well, we got some plants growing and we can measure that, and I'm exaggerating. But would they come down and say, man, we got a problem with that plastic system? You will not hear a lot of university folks go out and do that.
But that is a form of advocacy. Not advocating.
Not advocating.
Is advocacy.
Yes, it's what Anika is saying is being passive and being quiet and being like, okay, this is a real problem. I have a slide in here, but we'd have to jump forward to it on another problem. Is that there's a graphic, and I'm not going to show it, but it's like the size of the screen is circle. USDA funding. Organic funding is this big in the picture. It's like this, right? I just moved to the University of New Hampshire, Durham, New Hampshire, where I took the role of chair of the newly formed Agriculture, Nutrition, and Food Systems program. And it's a progressive think, and I'm very excited about it. Thank you. And by the way, I'm looking for some young folks to join me. We've got funding if this kind of stuff that I haven't even told you the kind of stuff we do. I'm just telling you about NOSB stuff here. But we're looking for some people. So if you know of some people that would like to work on policy or real organic. We were talking, Lindley and I were at lunch, about how interesting it would be to use the study farms as a network of farms in a participatory network contributing data about the quality of their farmsteads. So enough on the university thing. We can do better, and we have the younger faculty are doing much better than the older faculty. Much more willing to engage, and that's really encouraging. As to, is the USDA going in the right direction, and if not, what can we do? Personally, I think that the direction that I see this group going in about a supplemental label, to me, makes a great deal of sense. And I totally support that idea. As a shopper, I have two sisters that are shoppers, and when they hear me telling them what is going on with hydroponics and they buy organic, they are shoppers that do care, actually, about not just about the price. And my kids care, and not just about the price. And their friends care, and not just about the price. So I think it does matter for folks to know what's going on with this. And I'm personally also really annoyed with getting vegetables that don't have any taste. I'm a bagel eater in the morning, egg and tomato. And it freaks me out to no end to get a white tomato on my bagel, which is becoming more and more common. A light pink tomato with a white center that doesn't have any taste. The other thing is that when Anika was born in 1973 in New York City, I was a junior in high school in New York City in 1973. I taught in Spanish Harlem for a while before going back to graduate school, 5th grade children. And I can't agree more with Anika that we have to bring the food system and our people together so that we are touching food, we are cultivating soil, and we are understanding the difference between something that has co-evolved in the soil to grow in the soil with its whole microbiome, as we heard, and all of the cool ways that roots talk to shoots, and leaves that are bitten by the insect not only upregulates these cool things that are good for our health, it calls in the parasitoids to come eat the herbivore that's eating the leaf, that's talking to the roots. And that's what this is all about. So I'm going to end there. I see hope. I think this business of this very large-scale production undermining dairy. I was at a lunch the other day with Organic Valley, sitting with our university organic farm manager of our organic dairy, who is talking about the cap on milk production, and the rest of it is just they don't even want it because of this very same price problem that we've been hearing about is unconscionable, and we need to let the consuming public know what's going on. I'll end there. Thank you.